Change is hard, not because you're doing it wrong, but because it asks something of you. Welcome to Change is Hard, a podcast from the Leadership Lab. I'm Audrey Blair, and this is a space for leaders who are learning how to sit with uncertainty, make decisions without rushing, and grow without losing themselves in the process. We'll talk about the moments that stretch you, the conversations you keep avoiding, and the quiet shifts that change everything. No noise, no pressure, just honest conversations about becoming the kind of leader and human you actually want to be. Let's get into it. So I spend a lot of time talking about leadership. I talk about clarity, communication, delegation, trust, decision-making, but I do know that it's easy to sound wise when you're holding a microphone, and I also know that it's easier said than done. So today I invited someone who works closely with me to answer a much more uncomfortable question. Do I actually practice what I preach? And this is timely because Feliz, who serves as not only my assistant, but also a program manager for some programs that we're running here at the company, the Leadership Lab. And she was just here last week for our strategy meeting. So she actually got to spend probably the most amount of time, I would say that's the most amount of time we spent together working closely. I mean, she's come with me on a few projects with clients, but that's also slightly different. So that's probably the most amount of time we spent working together. So welcome, Feliz.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here for this conversation with Audrey. We've had this idea for a while now, and so it's exciting to see it come to fruition, especially after our strategy meeting where I absolutely agree. I think we definitely got to know each other even more than we have in that one-on-one time. And so I think that time was really valuable for both of us. And so I'm excited to get the conversation started.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say we did talk about this probably a few weeks back, but I do want to say this is not planned. This is not scripted. Today in our regular
Nope.
Monday morning meeting, I said, hey, why don't we record that? And so I don't know what's actually about to happen. But the one thing I do know and trust that you will do is, of course, you have permission to be honest, as you always are. This is not new for us in our working relationship.
Yeah.
So I also don't want it to be, and I don't think you're going to do this, but this is not a way for you just to give me props or anything like that. So I really am genuinely interested in
Yeah.
what you have to say and what you think about these things. Let me throw up some softballs and maybe just start with, generally speaking, what did you expect working with me to be like? Because you've never really worked with a company as small as mine,
Mhm.
and you were coming from working in city and county government, and
Mhm.
you have a different type of experience than what this job is. So what did you expect working with me would be like?
Yeah, I think initially when I came across the opportunity to work with you, um, it seemed really exciting because it was an opportunity to use a variety of different parts of my skill set. And I think when I first met you, it was like, oh, she's building something. So I'm going to help her organize that. So when I came in, I thought, I'm going to help be an organizer and just make sure all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, be an extra set of eyes for Audrey. And really, it was kind of unknown too of what to expect. I think because we both started during the holiday, right? And so it was in the middle of a transition and we were kind of just getting all of our ducks in a row in terms of what the work was going to look like. And so I think at the beginning, for me, it was a lot of questions that I was kind of just waiting to get answered. And I feel now that we have, it has been 9 months. I feel like so many of those questions have been answered and my role is so much more clear to me. But I knew when I was going to work with you because I was a referral and we were connected through somebody that we both know and trust. I knew it was going to be a good opportunity for me. from that person just because they've worked with you before and they've worked with me before and they know both of our skill sets. And so there was that confidence that I already felt coming into it, knowing that somebody we both trusted referred us to each other.
Mm.
And I think when somebody does that, it's because they see something that we can both work with each other in. And so it was kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but it was an exciting opportunity with some unknowns for me, I'll say, in terms of what to expect.
A lot of unknowns, I'm sure, because I probably
Yeah.
had also had some unknowns at that time as well.
Mhm.
And just broadly speaking, maybe what was anything is anything that different than what you started in terms of your expectations?
I think coming from the world that I was in, really the biggest change is time. And like you allowing me to take the time that's needed rather than just kind of producing things and getting them out to get them out. I feel like in this work, it's way more intentional than I anticipated. And that's been a really positive change for me in terms of a working environment. Not to say that people haven't granted me time in the past, but I think really giving me permission, you giving me permission to take the time to think about things and really be strategic about them, that's my biggest difference than what I was expecting. I don't think I had anticipated actually being able to have strategy time to think through problems and really try to be intentional with how I present my work to you. That's the biggest change for me.
No, I really like that you said that because even when you just described what you were expecting, you thought you were going to be dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. While that's important, I wasn't looking for someone just
Hmm.
to only execute without really, as you said, thinking through, having intention, really putting your eyes on something, put some thought into it. So
Hmm.
um, I love that. I love that you said that. What is something that I do that makes your job easier? Would you say?
Oh, let's see. I think you ask the right questions. Sometimes I am not thinking through certain questions, and you ask a question sometimes that will just kind of open up the doors and makes all the different moving pieces sort of fall into place and it makes sense. So you really have a really strong way of asking questions that matter. And that makes my job easier because then I'm not guessing a lot of the time. Or if I'm asking you for information, I can count on the fact that you're giving me all the information I need and that I'm not going to have to go back to you and get clarification usually. You're very clear in what you're telling me most of the time. And I think that helps when I'm doing my work, just because you sort of make your expectations clear and by asking those questions. And I don't have to guess with you. Like, if you ask me, what do you think about something? You're genuinely asking what I think about something and you want my opinion versus me getting asked a question and then kind of telling you what I think you want to hear. I know that that's not what you want from me. And so, really making that clear from the get go and us really improving on that too. Because I think initially I was a little intimidated because you are so direct. And I haven't ever had somebody be that direct working with me. And so I don't feel like I have to guess. And I don't feel like what you're telling me isn't the truth or something that's going to, trip me up. It really is just to get us to the same understanding and making sure we both understand what we're working on and towards.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely believe that context matters. And I remember the first few times I would ask you about what you think. And I remember one time you actually threw it back at me and said, "Well,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. What do you think?" And I thought, "Oh, that's a trap. That's avoiding the
Yeah.
question." And we had a couple of rounds of that. And
Hmm.
yes, I genuinely was asking you. I didn't want you to just tell me what you thought I wanted to hear. particularly because you didn't know what I wanted to hear. So I really just wanted to know
Yeah.
what your thoughts were about something. So that's
Mhm.
something I would say that you have grown in quite a bit because that was at the beginning. It was hard to maybe pull some of those things out. So that's interesting.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, just getting better in terms of communicating my thoughts and ideas and being confident to ask questions to you when I don't understand something, you've really helped create that space to where I feel like I can. And I think that's so important.
Okay. So then the
Mhm.
opposite, what's something that I do that makes your job unnecessarily harder or just harder?
Oh, I think I don't think it's necessarily a negative, but it's something that I've had to adjust to, is you take more time to reply to things than I normally am used to. And so it's not that that is a bad thing, but I've definitely had to adjust because I'm the kind of person that if I send an email, I'll read it, I'll respond right away. And you definitely take a beat with it. You think about it. Sometimes you'll bring it back to the meeting and we'll talk about it there. And that's something that is it's not bad, but it's something that I've had to get used to just because, like I said, I think I've always been moving at the speed of light and you really have, you're not that person and that's not your expectation at all. And so that's something, it's not that it slows my work, but it makes me more methodical now in terms of how I'm approaching the work. Because I
Mm,
think it's not just a checklist to get things done and off the checklist and say, hey, I finished this project, what's next? It's really thinking deeply about that project and what it means and why we're doing it and coming with new ideas about the project. Um, and that's been a challenge for me. Just because, like I said, moving at speed of light, getting things done. That's how it's normally been in all of my past jobs. And this one is so different in terms of that.
yes, I am not that
Yeah.
person. So I know that that's hard for you because even a couple times you would ask me about a few emails, and I thought, what is the importance of that
Yeah.
particular data point or whatever it was that we need an answer
Hmm.
right now? I'm not sure yet. I'm thinking about it. Or
Yeah.
that's not even a priority at this moment. So we'll get to it. But that's very interesting. And I do see that. And I see
Hmm.
that still. Now, to be fair, I think that is an area where you are better, you are good at that. And so I do have to be aware that, okay, I need to give her a response for some of these things, and
Hmm.
speeding that up a little bit. So I do think it's a bit of a push and pull there, but I am not, yes, I am not gonna rush just for the sake of rushing. I just,
Hmm.
there's to me, there's no point and things get missed often. So that is hilarious. Yeah, that one I see very clearly. And I do think it probably makes it harder just because if your expectation is read something, get it out, that's not the
Hmm.
way that I roll. For sure. For sure.
Yeah. No, and I think it makes sense because even though it can be frustrating for me sometimes, I then have to ask myself, okay, why isn't she responding right away? Maybe this isn't as much of a priority as I'm making it, right? Or maybe this is something that we can take a little more time on. So for me, even when you don't reply, I feel like I'm learning to then read into, okay, no reply means A, B, and C, rather than just saying, oh, she's ignoring me. It's no, she's taking her time with it. She's going to come to me with a few ideas. And I'm learning on what to expect a little bit more when it's not an immediate reply. Because I think so, like when you do reply quickly, it's like, oh, okay, this is something that we need to get done. This needs to move forward. And so I think it's really, it's like you said, it's a give and pull. And we're definitely learning each other in that sense. And I'm learning, okay, what does the pause mean? And what does the no response mean? And where do I go with that? Rather
That's
than taking it to like and letting my anxiety take over.
that's interesting. That's good that you actually try and figure out, well, which is it? And anticipating what that could be. Wow. All right. So you know, obviously, that I talk a lot about leadership, and I often
Mhm.
ask clients what kind of leader do they want to be or what their leadership style is. And I think I have an idea. Well, I know I have an idea what my leadership style is and what I like to be. How would you describe it? So let me put it this way. If you were to describe it to someone maybe considering working with me versus just,
Mm, uh-huh.
telling a friend, if you were to say, hey, if you want to be a part of this company, these are some things you need to understand. How would you describe my leadership style in that context?
I would say that Audrey is a very truthful leader. I think honesty is just part of your brand. And so if somebody was going to come work with us, I would let them know that you're personable. I think that we have good conversations with each other and we are able to communicate through our differences and through our likeness at the same time. I think that you're a caring leader in that sense, in that you want to have a space where people can be open and share their thoughts and ideas and push you in ways too. A leader that's open to growth and shifting. You're not a leader that stays stagnant. So if something's not working, you're not afraid to try something new. And I think that's a really big positive. I'm thinking like the word that keeps coming to the forefront is innovative. Like you're an innovative leader in that sense.
Wow.
Um,
I'll take it.
uh, because I think you've definitely taught me different ways of looking at a problem and thinking through it. And to me, that's innovation in it, how to tackle an issue in a different way or think about it in a different way. Innovative and caring is what I will stop at
Okay.
for your type of leadership.
Interesting. Interesting. That's interesting you didn't bring up, like, gives a lot of feedback because I feel like I give you a
Oh,
lot of feedback, a lot.
110%. And I think that's kind of where I was going with like the honesty. You will give feedback in the moment. You will give feedback in the meeting, right? Or if it's not the right time, we'll talk about it later. You're definitely a leader that gives feedback. And I think that's really powerful because there's no guessing in terms of what you're thinking or what your expectations are. And I think in my past experiences, I feel like I've had to guess a lot of the time, like, what does this really mean? Whereas with you, it's just like, no, Audrey is saying this and this is what it means. It's very clear. So definitely somebody who gives a lot of feedback.
Okay. All right. So, how would you say when it's something that maybe we don't agree on or coming at a maybe different sides of it, how easy it is for you to disagree with me or to have a different opinion or thought? And how do I make you feel about that?
Hmm. I would say this is something that I've had to get more comfortable with. And I think that's something that you talk about is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable when you disagree or when something isn't necessarily aligned in the same way where we're coming maybe from two different perspectives or ways of thinking about it. At first, I was very intimidated. I really did not want to, bring up anything that could potentially rock the boat. But you've made a space where I think I feel comfortable to do that now. When we do disagree on something, I think we're both animated, but very respectful of one another. And like, I, I know that when we're having a conversation, it's from a place to understand or get more information in that question, or if we're disagreeing, wondering what the why is behind something or what's making us really think that way. I feel like it's become even more comfortable for me to have those conversations with you. Whereas at the beginning, I was very intimidated and felt, I don't know, like just I did not want to say anything that might rock the boat. And now I've learned sometimes the boat needs to be rocked a little bit so we can get a better understanding of something or to figure out the best solution for something. And that's really helpful. And I feel like that's just a way that I've grown in terms of having, difficult conversations and bringing them to the forefront. I think you said this in one of your previous podcasts, but it's like a muscle that needs to be worked. And I know I can tell that you have had so much workout in that area and practice in having conversations and managing, difficult situations or disagreements. And that's something that I feel like I'm finally getting in terms of that strength in terms of talking about or through difficult things and disagreements in a
Mm.
way where we're both heard and both respected. And, maybe what I'm bringing to you isn't the direction that we're going to go, but I don't have any doubt that my idea wasn't listened to or that my perspective wasn't heard. And I think that's really validating in a lot of ways. So that's how I would say.
Well, that's good, and I'm glad that you feel that way because I think that's true. Even if I don't, as you said, don't go with your idea, it's not because it wasn't heard. And we
Mhm.
do have very different perspectives on a number of things. We are not two peas in a pod. I mean, on certain
Yes.
certain topics and certain things, we would be on opposite sides. And part of that I love because it does open the door for those conversations.
Mhm.
And I'm grateful that you're willing to engage with me on those conversations, and I hope that you find
Mhm.
them as fulfilling. And I think some of the conversations we've had, I go away thinking more about it, and I think maybe you do too. And
Mhm.
sometimes I will wrestle with some of the things that we might have conversations about, which
Mhm.
ultimately bleeds into the work that I do. And it also helps me because I do have to, at least I feel like a part of my responsibility as a coach, as a facilitator, as someone that's presenting workshops, as someone that's working with leaders and organizations are going through tough times, that being able to say the hard things and challenge
Mhm.
others, not in a like, you have to do this, but making it okay that
Mhm.
these are hard conversations. Yes. However, they're also quite necessary for us to continue moving forward. So
Mhm.
I do appreciate
Mhm.
that you do engage with me on those and are able to stand your ground. I mean, you could very easily just throw your hands up and go, "Well, never mind," or forget it, or you don't get it,
Mhm.
or you don't understand me for sure. But certainly because not only do we have different thoughts about different things, but we're totally different generations. So sometimes I might come to you with a
Yeah.
generational question about help me understand this. Help me. What am I
Yeah.
missing here? What am I not getting from this approach?
Mhm.
Or this happened to me. Tell me what you think about it, right? Not that you are
Mhm.
representative of your generation, but still it's a broadening of perspective that you help me to bring. And I appreciate that so much. Even though they're hard, I do kind of enjoy some of those conversations because it helps me work out some of those things as well.
Mhm.
I think there's 2 things that I wanna do. One, I wanna talk about things that I basically preach or things that I say, and do they
Mhm.
actually show up in my work with you as a leader?
Mhm.
But also, maybe what are some things that maybe my clients don't know about me? So, is there a phrase I think I have a phrase when I'm overwhelmed, what I might say, or if it's, like, stressful, or do you know what that is? Do you get a sense of something I might say
Mhm.
when I'm not sure that you're thinking I'm stressed, but there is something that I will say when I'm like,
I know, I don't know if I'm gonna get it verbatim,
"That's okay."
but it's usually something like, "I don't have the capacity for that today." And then we move on, and we're like, "Okay, that my capacity for that is in our Monday check-in. Don't ask me about that again," right? Like, we're gonna talk about that Monday.
That's the
Usually it's that.
one. Yes. It's that or some version of "That's not important right now."
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's hilarious, you nailed it. That's so funny. Yeah, I don't have the capacity for that right now. So,
Uh-huh.
and because it's not that important, we'll deal with it. And do I do a good job of telling you when we'll deal with it? Do I actually
Oh,
say,
yeah,
okay,
absolutely. I feel like it's usually followed up like, "I don't have capacity with that today. Add that to the agenda for our check-in, follow up with me about that." And then if it's really like back burner, follow up with me about that in 3 weeks when I'll have more time, after this, and this is off my plate. And then we do, and we follow up with it.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah. That's so amazing. Yes, you're right. When things are kind of tight, or if I'm feeling the
Mhm.
pressure and I have priorities and you're bringing up some random email, I'm like, I can't even, I just don't have it for that right now. So,
Yeah.
okay. Um, how about, okay, this is one I also talk about with making decisions. How would you
Mhm.
say my decision making is? Because I do stress this with leaders, and it's not so much about always trying to find the right decision. It's about making a decision,
Mhm.
making it right. And if it's not the right one, you get to, come back to it. How how would you say I am about making decisions? Would you say that I'm pretty good at it? I'm slow at making decisions? Am I so and let me I guess if I gave you some context,
Mhm.
we're I know we just decided on a CRM system. Um, and there are maybe some systems or some things that have to do with clients that I work on.
Mhm.
And there's obviously there's going to be a nuance to this answer because I know it depends. But generally speaking, how would you say my decision making skills are?
I think I wouldn't say you're slow at coming to a decision. I think you're methodical about coming to a decision, and so sometimes the decision takes time to come to. But I will say when it's a decision that requires an answer more immediate, you're pretty quick to answer like, yes, move forward with that or no. But I would say you're a methodical decision maker. So you're not just making decisions willy nilly. Your decisions are going to lead somewhere. I say methodical because there's a lot of intention behind the decision, and you like to have information when you make a decision. You like to have questions answered and know what you're getting into a little bit more or what that decision is going to lead to. It's not slow, it's methodical.
Okay,
Mhm.
I'll take that. I like that. I
Mhm.
would agree. I do tend to take time and think of different sides of things.
Mhm.
So, okay. All right. Another thing that I talk quite a bit about is delegation. How am I a delegate? Okay, I guess this is I guess I have a couple of questions around delegation. One,
Okay.
obviously I delegate things. So that's not, I don't, that's a yes. Well, I guess if you think that I don't, but I think I do a pretty good job of actually delegating. But the real question is,
Mhm.
do I actually give you autonomy? Do I delegate and then come up behind you and be sniffing at what you're doing? Do you feel
Mhm.
like you can, if I give you something to own, that you own it? Do you think that I delegate, but I'm still like have one hand on the steering wheel? What are your thoughts there?
I think you're good at delegating. I don't necessarily feel like you're like a micromanager in that sense. You're not coming in and trying to change every little thing I'm doing. I think if there's a disagreement with maybe how or a disagreement with my approach on something, we'll talk about it, and that's an opportunity for feedback. But it's not an opportunity for you to take a project away from me. It's more like, okay, what did we learn from doing it this way, and why would we approach it differently the next time? And so you let me own things and you'll provide feedback in terms of how I'm driving it. And sometimes you're like, okay, let's correct a little bit, go a little straighter this way, or you missed a turn. But that I feel like it's kind of like when I have training wheels. And so it's just making sure I understand things moving forward. And then you fully give me a project, and then we continue to just talk about that project and what maybe your expectations are or how they've changed. And so I feel like what I own is what I own. But then when you're in it, if something isn't maybe working right, we just have a discussion about that. It's not
Okay.
like you take the project away from me, or, yeah, you don't take a project away from me and tell me that, it's not working. We just discuss the project and how it can move forward better, based on the expectations or the changes that are coming, those kinds of things.
Okay. I love that. And we've had
Mhm.
some, we had a pretty significant failure as well that we had to work through. And,
Mhm.
I'm trying to think, was I really tempted to pull that back? And I thought, no, I wasn't. Well, to be fair, because I didn't want it. I thought, "No, this is yours, you own it." And yeah, this was
Mhm.
a problem. We had a pretty big
Mhm.
problem that we had to rectify, and I think I stepped in enough to get it corrected, to help you correct it,
Mhm.
and some of that was just maybe that was just re-articulating, "No, this is yours, you own it," and I
Yeah.
expected you to actually own it and do all the things that were necessary for that. So,
Mhm.
so I say that to say I feel like that was, an example of a learning curve, of failing and then getting back up
Mhm.
and then continuing on with it. So, and through that process, did you feel like you came out of that empowered, or did you feel bad, or what how did you feel to going through that?
I feel empowered by it because I think if I felt bad about it, it would have been because you were taking something away or completely taking me off the project, like I couldn't handle it. It was really more so about giving myself permission to own the project because I think that's something that I've had to work with. When you assign me something, understanding that it's fully mine to own and you mean and I think that was something that I just had to work through. And it was really empowering to go through that and not have it taken away. And really just you trying to help me build up the capacity to own that in the way that you were imagining it owned. And so I felt empowered. And I think from that failure, I have learned sometimes we will fail, but it's not the end of the world. And we're going to bounce back from it and we're going to keep growing and moving forward together and figuring out the best solution. So I felt empowered by that failure. That kind of sounds a little weird, but because of how we move forward with it.
Okay. Okay, great. I'm glad to hear that. That's a question that I've been
Mhm.
wanting to ask you since we've got some time removed from
Yeah.
recovering and getting through and making some different decisions about things. So
Mhm.
so that's cool. All right, one last question about delegation. Do I delegate enough? Are there more things that I should be delegating to you right now?
I think we've had to build up trust with one another over time. And I think you've started to delegate even more things to me as we've built up that trust. I think initially I was expecting to have more things delegated to me, but I think we needed to grow to a place where you trusted me. We understood what each other's sort of working styles were like and your leadership style and my style together and what that looked like. I think we're getting to the point where you're delegating more stuff to me and we've really gained that trust for you to delegate more to me. And so my hope is that, as we continue to move forward in our working relationship, I'll get more tasks and projects delegated to me as we move on. And I feel like that is something that I've seen grow in our time working together. I think at the beginning it was just a few things here and there. And now there's more comfortability of you delegating things to me and trusting me to move forward with those things.
You bring up an interesting you're talking about trust here, and I'm
Hmm.
curious, would you say I extended trust up front, or do you feel like I made you jump through hoops or made you prove something before I trusted you? Did you feel like, "Oh, no, she's holding back?" What do you
Yeah,
think?
I don't necessarily think that you were holding back. Maybe a little bit at the beginning, but I think it was more so because we were trying to figure out things out
Yeah.
from that perspective and building that trust. I always go back to some of the emails that I would initially send that were really built in with a lot of uh like just private world jargon, business jargon that really didn't need to be involved in some of our emails. And, you would kind of tell me, let's talk about how you're writing your emails. And initially, that was something that I was like, oh my gosh, I've never been told something about my emails. Maybe I've just been sending out horrible emails. But it was really a good conversation to have because it was just a clarifying of the expectation of what our voice is like with the people that we're working with the stakeholders and who the stakeholders are. So I think trust has been built up with intention.
My thoughts on that are this. I don't know.
Hmm.
I think it was less of trusting in you per se, because I was at a point where it was growing, things were moving quickly. I needed your help, I
Hmm.
needed your support. But to your point, trusting that you understand my position, where I'm coming from, and you coming from the sector that you came from, the way that you would talk about things, I'm like, that's not the way I talk about things. And so for you to
Mhm.
have that understanding, it was key, particularly if you're speaking on my behalf. So I
Mhm.
agree with you. And I'm glad you didn't take it as me not trusting you. And the other thing that I'll say with you coming in, there are things that I didn't know. I was also at the beginning figuring it out. I think your growth has been amazing. I think it's been fantastic.
I really feel like this time working with you, we both learned a lot of things. And I think it's been positive for me to, you know, work with somebody who we can have, disagreements with one another. We can have healthy communication with one another. I've just learned a lot more about myself, I think, working
Mm,
with you and what I maybe need to work on in my own life in terms of how I can, keep getting comfortable with the uncomfortable and how to show up authentically without, sacrificing a part of myself in the workplace. I think every week I'll talk to my husband and be like, "So I learned this week about myself." And I think this is something that I've always needed to work on, but I've never really had the time or space to think through it. And so I just learn a lot. I think some of the biggest lessons that I've had in leadership come from people who have led me. And this has been a really positive way for me to learn ways that I can improve my leadership by working that mental muscle on having hard conversations and working with somebody who maybe we don't agree on all the different ways that we think through something, but how can we continue to work for it and have a positive working relationship with one another and ensure that the work continues moving forward in a positive direction. And I think it's just been lots of great opportunities for growth in this time that we've spent with one another. I think my communication has improved. I'm not as nervous, I think, to bring up my ideas or questions. There's just been a lot of growth for me in this. And I think it comes from having you really lead and show me how you lead. And that's been a great opportunity to observe and understand how I can adjust my own leadership when I'm working with my own supervisees again. Like how can I make sure that I'm the best leader to help them build that capacity? Because sometimes I'll be listening to the podcast as part of, the work that we're doing and I'll be like, wow, I really needed this lesson 2 years ago. And so I feel like I'm just building up a skill set and my own like tool bag with a variety of leadership tips and tricks that I don't think I necessarily had the tools before. And so I'm a very much so learn by doing and I learn by observing. And so that's what I've taken from seeing you lead, how I want to lead in the future.
okay. Now that I'm feeling all fuzzy and feeling good. So if I ask you specifically, what are you learning about leadership? Since we are a
Mhm.
leadership development company, what are you learning about leadership right now?
I think what I'm learning about leadership is that especially when you are at a certain level, you are required to make decisions. And sometimes it's going to be a difficult decision to make, right?
Hmm.
And that's okay. I think I probably have said it, but it's a muscle that just needs to be practiced over and over and over again. And your comfortability with having, that difficult decision or that difficult challenge or conversation, the more you practice with it, the better you'll become. And you shouldn't be afraid to fail in your leadership because that's an opportunity for you to grow and learn what can you do better. And I think for me prior to coming into this, a failure was like, oh, the biggest thing that could happen. And it could really derail how you feel about yourself or how you move in terms of your leadership. And that's something that I've learned about leadership, is that leadership is both wins and losses. And both of those are valuable in terms of your path to becoming a leader. You learn from doing things amazingly, and you learn from the failures and what went wrong. The other thing that I really taken from this time is that it's okay to reflect and take time to understand what went wrong and what went right. To really pause and reflect is valuable. I think all leaders should be taking the time to pause and reflect, either with their team or solo, because that reflection time really does give you a lot of information that I don't think we necessarily take the time to think through sometimes. I think a lot of leaders are moving really quickly and have a lot of things on their plate. And that intentionality to pause and take time and think through something is something I don't think we give ourselves enough permission to do as leaders. And you've empowered me to really pause and reflect and think through things. And I think that's super valuable.
Well, Feliz, thank you so much for this time and
Yes.
your vulnerability and your openness and your honesty. And I'm glad to hear. I think I got a pretty good grade from that. I don't know. I'm feeling pretty
Yeah,
good. I'm pretty feeling good
absolutely.
about that. So I appreciate you. If I haven't said it before, but if I
Yes,
don't
you
say it
have.
enough, I definitely appreciate you. And so thanks so much. I hope you guys enjoyed this time listening into a conversation with Feliz and I will see you next time.